Champ, 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 champ.
Perfect, perfect, perfect,
champ, champ.
I was gonna rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one to stop me. Lynx, conqueror. No, I'm Alexander. He's no Alexander. I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody as ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston. I'm Dan Simpson. There's no one like me. I'm from N.E.L.P. There's no one that can match me.
I am Joanna Iovino. I am a North End resident and I am the founder of North End Little Pantries. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. First 3 years in Queens, lived in Queens, and then my family moved us out to Long Island. And that's where I grew up in. I had both of my parents living with us. My father was, you know, the typical old Italian fashioned father who was, you know, working, but he did a lot more than his parents did, you know, because it's a generational thing, but he was trying to break some of those habits of the women have everything to do with the kids and the men are just off doing whatever. So he was home with us and we used to go out to different little restaurants and he would change diapers and do bathing and all that stuff. But it was, you know, the traditional structure. Well, I was in Long Island by the time I was 3. So it was a very, at first it was just a working class neighborhood, and as the years passed by the time I was like in elementary school, it became more of a middle class to upper middle class neighborhood. And so my family kind of like, we were literally like one of the only 2 families who got any kind of lunch assistance or anything like that. But it became more of a fancy neighborhood as we got older, and that caused problems for us. Basically, the worst thing you could be where I lived was fat. Like, seriously. If you were 5 pounds overweight, you were fat, you were made fun of. So from when I was 6 years old, I was bullied and made fun of for being the fat kid. And it ended up creating like serious issues as far as mental health issues and all that. You know, my parents tried to be supportive, but they didn't really understand because they weren't in the same situation. So, but ever since I moved away from the suburbs, I never wanted to go back again because of that, because that was an experience that lasted into adulthood even. It still impacts me to this day, to be totally honest, but I wouldn't change it for the world because I've been like an anti-racist activist in particular, and now doing the food justice work. And I don't know if I ever would have done that if it wasn't for my experience being bullied and being ostracized when I was a kid, because I took that pain and never wanted to see that on anybody else, you know? So I started becoming someone who would fight for other people instead of just feeling sorry for myself about it. And it's easier to fight for other people, for me at least, than it was to fight for myself. So. I went to, you know, the same kids through kindergarten all the way up through high school. You know, there was a couple of elementary schools and they joined together, but we pretty much all knew each other from when we were little kids, and so no matter what, everything just kind of carried along with you for all those years. There was some kids moving around, but it was basically the teachers would be like, "You're being bullied? Well, just lose weight. It's as simple as that." And, yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. And so I became this little hippie kid, and this was 1983, so 1983 to like 1986, so just imagine, like, I'm like 10, 11 years old in 1983, dressing up in all these clothes like from the 60s. And then I just continued doing that. So that just led to even more, being ostracized even more, but I was okay with that. And I thought I wanted to go to school for music. And so I went to school for music. I realized I wasn't that good at it. And my mom was like, you need to be a social worker, because I always wanted to be involved in activism, and I didn't have the opportunity there at all. There was no opportunity there to be involved in it. So when I went away to school, then I started becoming more involved in community service and activism, and then when I moved to Hartford, that was when I really was able to become more active. I moved to Hartford in 2011. I lived for 1 year on Wadsworth Street, and I was determined to move to the North End after about 6 months. And so I moved over to Mather Street, about 2 blocks away from where I am right now. And I've been here since 2012. I always see more of the positive things in the community. I try to see the assets in the community instead of the negative things. I mean, yes, you could sit there and talk about people on drugs and you see all that and everything, but people don't tend to notice the community that comes together. Like, I remember when I was first, when I first came here, I was walking down the street one day and someone leaned out their car window, and I really expected them to say something negative, because that used to happen to me all the time in New York. And they literally leaned, now I was 350 pounds at the time, 400 pounds at the time, so they literally leaned out the car window to applaud me walking. It was like, you go, and it was so like mind-blowing, because I never experienced anything like that before. And then I got involved with a lot of different people in the North End who are activists. I don't know if you knew Evelyn Richardson. She passed away a couple of years ago, but she had an organization called Daughters of Eve. So I became involved with her organization, and then I met Mike Fothergill through her. I met, not through her, but I started going to Kimura's places and everything like that. So I started meeting a lot more people in the community, and within a year, I can really say, like, I really felt like I was just part of the community. Like, yeah. People think that the North End is just about violence and crime, but it's more about community than anything else. I see so many people just really embracing and supporting each other, and people tend to overlook that because they only want to focus on the negative things. And the little pantries actually started out of that, because there's the food share trucks. So everyone who goes to the food, well, not everyone, but a lot of people who go to the food share trucks get more than what they can handle on their own. So a lot of us would give away the extras that we got on the food share trucks to people who were working during the day, so couldn't make it to the trucks, or families who had little kids and couldn't get out. So there was that mutual aid piece before they defined it as mutual aid, just people supporting people. And I started to realize that people here in the North End will give you the last thing in their cabinets before they will see a child, your child, go hungry. And it's not like that in a lot of other places where people are like, oh, well, you just need to fend for yourself. So I think people overlook that there's a lot of community and a lot of people doing for each other. I know everybody, you know, expects the same answer with, you know, violence in the community and this and that, but I see more as community. Like, people are longing for that connection with people. People are longing to have a place where they can stay instead of having to move every other year because these landlords are not keeping up the apartments. Someplace that's safe for their children, and where they could say to their neighbor, oh, can you watch my son for a few hours? Or they can send their kid to the park with their neighbor and feel safe doing that. I think the biggest thing, honestly, though, is housing, because I don't think anyone likes having to move every other year because their apartment is falling apart around them. Plain and simple. I lived in my old building for 8 years. I should have been out after 2 years when the ceiling in my bathroom came in. But I kept sticking it out because I did not want to have to move. So I was there for 8 years, and finally I moved because my bedroom ceiling collapsed. And I pretty much lost all my furniture in the bedroom. I couldn't stay in there, everything, so. And it's amazing how far, like, people have certain impressions, like they see dudes hanging out on the corner and they're fearful and this and that and worried, and I go up to everybody, I say hello, how are you doing this morning, good morning, people hold open doors, this and that, and my friend Evelyn was the same exact way. She would walk down the street, she would say hello to everybody she saw on the street, and everybody would be like, hi Miss Evelyn, hi Miss Evelyn. She came and brought flowers to Pliny Street. And then after Pliny Street, she brought flowers and gardens to Enfield Street. And people who did not like her at first were like all of a sudden, oh, can I get some flowers in my yard? Can I get some? They actually ended up putting Enfield Street on the list of the neighborhoods that they toured on the garden tour through Knox Gardens, through Knox Parks, and that was all from her work. And she said she would love the fact that people, when she passed by, would come out there so proud of, you know, how pretty their sidewalks were because they had the flowers out there. It's just a matter of talking to people. I don't know what your background is, but I went to school for social work. And one of the textbooks that almost every social work school uses, one of the first stories they tell is about how this outside organization came into the housing projects and said to the people, oh, well, these are some of the programs we want to do. What do you want to do? And they're talking about these anti-violence programs and anti-gun programs, and the people were like, we need mouse traps so we can get these rats out of our buildings. They said, we need the rats to be gone out of our building. And nobody considered that before. They were all coming in with these anti-violence programs and these, you know, money training programs and this and that, and it was as simple as get these rats out of our apartments before we can even think about doing anything else. So it's all about the community coming together and people coming together from where they are and from what the needs are at that moment in time, instead of projecting this is what we want to see 20 years from now, because you know what, 20 years from now you're still going to have the same issues. I came to Hartford, and you know, all these organizations that are about anti-violence and everything, it's all great and everything, it's all good, but 10, 11 years later, it's still the same problems going on. And I feel like, and no offense to anybody, but I feel like it's because everybody is going for the grant money that's being provided by outside entities that don't know what the community needs, instead of actually going to the community and saying, look, what is it that you would like to see? So it's not like, oh, they're terrible and this and that. It's just a matter of the government and these outside organizations they want to see a certain thing, and it doesn't include people having actual freedom. It just includes people following what they think is the best method. N.E.L.P started, like I said, I used to go to the different food share trucks, and then I would just bring back the food and give it to my neighbors. And then I started seeing all around the country, when COVID started, all these places were like, oh, there's this brand new thing called mutual aid, and we're all helping each other and putting up these little pantries and this and that. And I was like, wait a second, we've been doing that in the north end of Hartford since I got here, and for decades before that. So this whole mutual aid thing is not new, but it just became, well, let's put up some little free pantries instead of just handing it out to people individually. Let's put up the little free pantries. Let's get everybody involved. And so the first little free pantry was right here in front of my building. And then N.E.L.P just became, we literally named it so that we could say help N.E.L.P when we were trying to get people to get involved. So North End Little Pantries was the perfect acronym, because then we could use N.E.L.P, and it could be Help N.E.L.P as marketing for people to actually come and get involved in the mutual aid work. Well, I've been involved with his organization, For Unity, since I first came to Hartford 11 years ago. And so he was the person who I turned to, even though he's younger than me, and I hate to say it, but he was a mentor to me in starting the organization because he had experience with it. And I consider him a co-founder of N.E.L.P, because he's been there since day one in an advisory capacity. Almost everything that we've done, I've always run by him first. For Unity is our fiscal sponsor, so we're intimately involved with them. He comes out and helps load and unload when we go to the food bank. He helps us with a lot of the connections as far as reaching out to other organizations, reaching out to funding sources. Never wrote a grant in my life until a year and a half ago when I wrote my first grant for money from the Grassroots Fund, the New England Grassroots Fund. So he's really been like a mentor and an advisor throughout the whole process of getting N.E.L.P off the ground. I love it because I feel like I had good relationships with most of my neighbors already, but now it's like, oh, that's the girl that's the lady that fills up the food pantry, and everybody knows me now. And you know, of course, I kind of stand out from the way I dress, the way I look. I have a bald head, everything, you know. But it's been received really, really well, and I feel like hopefully people feel like I'm someone who they can come to, and like we have Narcan, I have right now clean needles. Hopefully we're going to be getting like stems and stuff like that people can come for harm reduction purposes. So at this point I feel like hopefully I'm the type of person that people can actually come to and be like, oh, do you have this? And we'll feel comfortable about it. So. Well, there's one garden right now being planned by N.E.L.P. We entered into Hartford Decides last year with the idea of a little living pantry, which would be a garden in the empty lot right across the street from here, so that we would have fresh produce every day for the pantries and also for people to just pick their own. So we got together with Levo International, which is a hydroponic program. So we won the voting for Hartford Decides. So we'll be installing a hydroponic garden at the corner of Garden and Mother, hopefully by June. And we put in again for another Hartford Decides this year. We're trying to get chess tables around the area in different parks, because we feel like that'll help bring people together as well, because we see people all the time going to the Y and playing chess. And there's a Taino chess club, I'm not sure where it is, but somewhere in Hartford. And you see people gathered there every day. So we want to bring people together that way also. Just give people a place to hang out, just enjoy themselves, you know. And then, yeah, so that's the big one. We're planning the hydroponic garden, across the little living pantry across the street here. And luckily that was city-owned property, so it was eligible for the Hartford Decides program. And we're also applying for a Love Your Block grant to enhance the hydroponic garden and add in a community space as well, with tables, seating, garbage, disposal of things and all that stuff. So. Talking to someone this morning, and I was talking about, she was talking about me being the crazy white lady in the North End, and everybody recognizes me, especially the way I dress and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, and I'm not a missionary either, because, you know, they got the white people in the North End, that they're there because, you know, they're church people, and they're trying to save the North End, and this and that, and trying to change people, not actually let people grow. You know, they just want to say, well, this is what you should be doing. And then, you know, there's the whole nonprofit industrial complex in Hartford, where, well, we're making our money by doing poverty-related programs. So we need to keep you poor. Because if you're not poor, we're not going to get money for our poverty-related programs anymore. Now imagine if Catholic Charities CEO gave up their huge salary and I shouldn't be naming specific organizations, but I'm going to anyway. Catholic Charities, CRT, the YMCA even. Imagine if their CEOs gave up their big salaries and actually put that into helping pay people's energy bills instead of just giving people $600 for the entire year, and you have to fill out tons and tons and tons of paperwork, and if you make one little mistake you don't get your $600. Imagine if they didn't pay their CEOs as much money and actually put that money into programming. They'd go out of business, honestly, because they'd be helping too much. And they want to keep their salaries, so.
Hey.
I don't know how realistic it is, but 2 doors down from here, there is an abandoned building that has been purchased, that has been given to the Hartford Land Bank. And we want to get that building. And we could have a little mini community center right there where people can come and get their food, come and play games, come and hang out. We can put For Unity and N.E.L.P both in there. Have a little headquarters. I don't know if you want to catch footage of that on your way out, but it used to be a daycare center, I think. But it's been abandoned for all the years that I've been here. So that's one of our future goals. Right now we're going to try to do we're going to try to do a crowdfunding, because we're going to go to Sustainable CT and ask them to match what we crowdfund. So instead of having to have all of our food stored in a U-Haul storage unit, we want to have it in an actual space where we can keep it indoors, keep it climate controlled, keep it out of the elements. I just want more people to see the assets that we have in Hartford. Like, so many people just see the negativity, and I really feel like that's the city government's fault. I feel like it's a lot of these nonprofit industrial complex organizations' faults, because they want to point out the bad things in Hartford so that they can get the funding. And this artificial war, because there's this war between the North End and the South End. And people on the South End think they're better than people on the North End, and that the North End is so dangerous and this and that, and it's ridiculous, because I can sit there and there was actually someone who I used to work with who used to say, oh, the North End is horrible, I would never go there, and I could point out 5 things within a mile of where they lived on the South End that were going on, but that didn't count because the North End was the bad place. I love the North End. I love the North End. I love the North End from the first time I came here. I went down to first time I ever came to the North End, I went to the Artist Collective for, I don't even remember, I think they did what might have been for Hartford Communities That Care anniversary party. One of those things, something like that. And I was like, I need to move up here. And so I did. After a year in Hartford, I moved to the North End. Sister Nandi. She was one of the first people I met in Hartford and worked with and worked for. Evelyn Richardson, who has unfortunately passed away, but she was a mentor to me and a very good friend. I remember just sitting at the... It's funny because her daughter was about 16 or 17 years old at the time, and Evelyn was talking about possibly moving eventually. And she's like, but Mom, what's going to happen to Joanna if we move? That was my family, you know? Of course, Tim has been a huge influence, and all the people who were involved in For Unity years ago. Those are the main ones that I would say. Kamara, absolutely. Kamara is one of the huge influences, and has also helped with my own personal growth and healing. So, and so has Tim. So. so excited I finally got a chance to chat with Champ. I've been waiting for this for what, 4 or 5 months now? And I was getting jealous. I was like, when am I gonna get a chance?
Don't do that, Joe. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you.
So everybody follow Chat with Champ. Chat or Chatting?
Chatting, yeah.
Chatting with Champ.
Champ, 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 champ.
Perfect, perfect, perfect,
champ, champ.
I was gonna rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one to stop me. Lynx, conqueror. No, I'm Alexander. He's no Alexander. I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody as ruthless. I'm Sonny Liston. I'm Jack Dempsey. There's no one like me. I'm from N.E.L.P. There's no one that can match me.
I'm more than a man. You need more men. I am Mike with the hands. I lead with the pen. Got the mold of a beast. Fresh out the den. The code of the streets I got tatted on my skin. Watch your grill, cause boy I'm wanted. Champ been a threat like a left on foreman. Got the best performance, the best endurance. More cash like Floyd and I jab like Roy. Dedication, pain and the suffering is the tools I choose to do measuring. Cause niggas coming short, water in the sport. Speaking bullshit, feeding niggas pork. My bars enticing like a war with Tyson. I float with lightning, I spark the nicest. These niggas hyper, don't get hyper. I'm an animal, fuck around and bite ya. Niggas show respect when I come through. Bitches get wet when I come through. I always been a threat when I come through. Shit, I feel like the best when I come through. Niggas show respect when I come through. Bitches get wet when I come through. I always been a threat when I come through. Shit, I feel like the best when I come through. Hunger is deep, ocean tight. I chew through beats and probably overwrite. I gotta overwrite to get your head straight. How many shots can one man take? I'm in my best shape with a hook like Drake. Ringing niggas' ears like Dr. Dre. It's love and hate, go and ask radio. Raheem, but you don't hear me though. I'm stacking now, attracting crowds. Staying medicated like Pacquiao. I shock like tasers, had a lot to say bruh. 1, 2, and down went Frazier. Uppercut razors, come and get shaped up. Ain't shit, Sugar Shane over here, bruh. Got the heart of the Zulu, stepping right to you. You know what it is when I come through. Niggas show respect when I come through. Bitches get wet when I come through. I always been a threat when I come through. Shit, I feel like the best when I come through. Niggas show respect when I come through. Bitches get wet when I come through. I always been a threat when I come through. Shit, I feel like the best when I come through.